Cuban culture informs so much of the culture in Miami Beach, Florida, from food to music to Jewish life. That's right, Jewish Cubans.
The Cuban Jewish community and the Jewish community in general, along with the Spanish community, really established Miami Beach.
Rabbi Stephen Texon leads the Cuban Hebrew congregation of Miami.
The Jewish community, they fled the persecution first in Eastern Europe, coming to Cuba, and then coming here.
Florida International University professor Marcos Curbel says that the story began with Jewish shipmates of Christopher Columbus avoiding the Inquisition, then staying in Cuba, and continued during the Spanish-American War.
That's when the Jewish community, Americans, soldiers who come to Cuba, the day after the war was over, they decided to stay.
Curbel was born into a Jewish family in Cuba and emigrated to the United States in 1961 as a 13-year-old.
The situation started getting pretty bad already in 1960. And some of our friends that were going to school were basically, the parents were getting concerned, and they started leaving.
It was a time of transition for Cuba with the arrival of Fidel Castro and thus communism.
Jews traditionally took a very low profile to politics. Castro had one of his first minister of communication was a Cuban Jew. People in general were very favorable of Castro.
Jenna Gutman remembers Jewish life on the island well.
I went to Jewish school. I can write, I can read, and I can speak Yiddish. I had a fantastic education in Yiddish and Geschichte, everything. And Jewish kids had all the possibilities.
Half of the day was in Spanish curriculum, half a day was a Yiddish curriculum. Within the Spanish curriculum, we had a little bit of English. Within the Yiddish curriculum, a little bit of Hebrew.
And that was Jewish life on the island.
Jews in Cuba, even to the modern day, were not discriminated against.
Thus, the exit from Cuba was an unusual Jewish exodus based on political rather than religious persecution. Still, it was not easy.
We applied for a tour to Curacao.
And that was a trick to get out of Cuba?
Yes, sir.
For Marcos Curbel, he unwittingly became part of an operation organized to get unaccompanied kids from 6 to 16 out of Cuba.
Most of the Jewish kids, we didn't know. We always thought all along that this was strictly a Catholic operation, Pedro Pan. And the name Pedro Pan is named by a journalist from the Miami Herald who, following the story of the kids that fly away.
Rabbi Texon says that Cuban Jewish life then began here.
It all began here in 1961, established by Cuban refugees fleeing from the revolution.
Construction of the temple in Miami Beach came out of the reality that for these Jews, a return to Cuba was unlikely.
This really became the heart of the Cuban Jewish community.
Identity remained important to these new immigrants.
It was originally a social club called El Círculo because the community was more concerned about the cohesiveness of the Jewish community more on a social level even than a religious.
Just as the schooling in Cuba, the services in Miami were multilingual.
As far as the content of our services, it's primarily English and Hebrew with some Spanish and Ladino. Now, Ladino is Hebrew-Spanish.
Even today, a Ladino twist appears in familiar Jewish hymns at this synagogue.
Non como nuestro Dios, non como nuestro Señor.
I asked Jenna Gutman if being Jewish in Miami is different than it was in Havana.
Whoever is Jewish everywhere. I was born Jewish. I think it's in my blood.
But she does concede that being a Jewish Cuban, or a Juban as they're known down here, is pretty special.
Cuban is having a little bit of rock and roll.
Michael Shure, I-24 News, Miami Beach, Florida.